Hey everybody, it's Dr. Kesslin with the PhD Consultants. I am super excited that you're back with me for this podcast, doing the Doctorate Podcast. I'm super excited for this series. For a few weeks now, and interspersed throughout our regular show, we will be featuring some of my friends. And I'm calling them doctors in residence. They are in residence doing the work, and I want them to share their stories with you. Before we get into the session for today, I just want to remind you that we are here to support you. At the PhD Consultants, we provide support for those who are interested in entering in, going through, and getting out the doctoral programs. And so we provide a number of services. You can follow us on social media to learn more. We do a lot of stuff for free. Follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, we are on LinkedIn, we are on YouTube. We might be on TikTok if you look close enough, right? Just follow, share, like, support us at Dr. Kesslin. I am Dr. Kesslin everywhere, and I am so happy to do this work. I believe that doctors in the world make a difference. And so that's what I'm here to do. Through this series, we want to provide information and inspiration for those who are thinking about or who are in doctoral programs. And I'm excited because today we get to have a special guest. Have you ever thought about or felt lost, confused, overwhelmed by the doctoral journey? Maybe you're in the doctoral journey and you are trying to conquer the world and do all things in your dissertation, but you're realizing that you're bitten off maybe more than you could chew. Well, today, our special guest is going to talk about that and share his journey of how he almost didn't complete his doctorate trying to save the world. I'm excited to share this show and this space with my friend and one of my mentors, Dr. Harold Trullier. Stay tuned. I am so excited to have with me today one of my mentors in this social service work. This person combines his sociological background with his theological background. I'm excited that he has been my teacher. So anything that if you ever invite me to preach and you hear anything that's wrong with my preaching, blame him. Dr. Harold Trullier was my teacher. I am super excited to have you here with me, Doc. Doc, before we start to talk, let me just pull out my paper and give an introduction. Dr. Harold Dean Trullier is a PhD. He is an assistant pastor of Empowered Ministries Incorporated with his wife, the Apostle Brenda Trullier, who is the senior pastor. He is also an associate professor of applied theology, which I absolutely love, at the Howard University School of Divinity. He has done work in corrections, which is his own ministry in corrections. He is a published author. He's published books and edited books and produced curricula around this topic. He does quite a bit of correctional work. He has pastored extensively, and I am just really super excited to have him here. So let me stop talking in third person, him, and talk to you. Hey, Doc, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Dr. Kesslin. It's always a privilege. When you call me, I shall answer.
Yes, you have been faithful to that call, so I appreciate it. You know, Doc, the purpose of this show is really to inspire and inform doctoral dreamers and doctoral pursuers. I believe that having a doctoral degree allows you the opportunity to make a different, dynamic difference in the world. I truly believe that. And so this is my platform for sowing seeds and for supporting people. And I know that you believe the same. But let me just start by asking you to just share your doctoral journey. What influenced you to get a doctoral degree?
Oh gosh, I love that question because I know the answer right off the bat. I went to, by the way, this Penn State is for my son. My son coaches at Penn State, so I
Nice.
didn't go to Penn State. I don't teach at Penn State, right? That's my son. Okay, but I'm proud of him. He just got his master's at Point Park, and
Nice.
we're talking doctoral work now. But at any rate,
Nice.
I went to white college prep schools from fourth grade until I graduated from high school in Philadelphia. I went to Masterman Middle School and Central High School. They were public schools, but all prep schools, predominantly white.
Hmm.
And a buddy of mine and I decided that we needed an HBCU experience for undergraduate to kind of put us back online. This is 1971, before HBCUs were popular, and he suggested Morehouse. I'd never been south of Virginia, as a Philadelphia kid, and so I went to Morehouse. I joined the Glee Club, and one of the things the Glee Club had to do was to sing for commencement. So my freshman year, we stayed after. I go to commencement, and I see all these black folk coming in with that hat on and with
Yes.
that robe on, and there's Harvard, Cornell, Columbia. My own mentor, Wendell Whalum, he's got his Iowa stuff on, and I said, man, I got to get me one of those, right? So it was really being mentored by black PhDs at Morehouse that started me on my journey, so that I was clear. Now, I didn't know what a PhD was, right? I
Right.
didn't know, how to get one. I didn't know, I didn't know that. For me, it was the symbol of being an intelligent black person, and I
Hmm.
wanted to be a professor. I Morehouse did that for me. I had professors who were brilliant. I had professors who one story real quick. I was a music and religion major, so I took a course in African American music, 6 credits in African American music. And Wendell Whalen, my professor, says to me on a Friday, he says, "Truly, your assignment for the weekend is to go to the library and do a 3x5 card on everything W.B. Du Bois ever wrote."
Mm.
Like everything? He says, yes. So I spent my whole weekend at the library. With Du Bois taught at Atlanta University. I came back with a stack of 3x5 cards like this. And so I put them on his desk, and he said, "What's that?" I said, "The 3x5 cards." He said, "Okay." I said, "Aren't you going to look at them?" He said, "They're not for me." He said, "You're the one that needed to be exposed to the Du Bois corpus. I already know what's in there."
Mm.
Never looked at them. Now, part two is when it came time for me to do my comprehensive exams and set my comprehensives. The committee at Drew University, where I did my PhD, asked me what figure I wanted to study. I said W.B. Du Bois. I want him to be one of my comprehensive people in sociology of religion. And they said, "Well, we're not really familiar with the Du Bois corpus, but we will allow that if you provide us with an annotated bibliography of Du Bois's work in the field." I still had my 3x5 cards. Okay. So that level of challenge and in an undergraduate HBCU really propelled me into doctoral work. And that's where the inspiration came, being around black professors at Morehouse College.
Doc, I had a similar experience in that I didn't. I'm from a very small town. I mean, very town, not a city, town. And I didn't know that there were doctors other than physicians and dentists, the practitioners of science.
Mhm.
And then I went to my little HBCU. At that time, I was at St. Augustine's College. And convocation, I'm seeing all these robes and tams and the fancy tams too, the fancy hats. And I said, wow, what is this? It was just so impressive. And then ultimately I transferred to Oakwood College, and I remember seeing black folk in their finest academic regalia. And I mean, it wasn't the paper thin robes.
Mhm.
These were the nice robes. And I said, I don't really know what that means, similar to you. I don't know what this means, but I know I want one. And my girlfriend and I, Dr. Anne Marie Buchanan, used to say, we want the bars. We don't know how to get them, but we want the bars. And we both now are doctors in social work. So I can so relate to you in talking about the impact and the unconscious influence to some degree
Hmm.
of Black
That's right.
scholars. Of Black
Hmm.
scholars, yeah, representation matters. And so you got your PhD from
Drew University
in what area?
in sociology of religion with a minor concentration in social ethics.
And there are how many other sociologists of religion in the country?
Uh, I'm sure there are lots of white ones. African American used to be more than there are now. People like Eric Lincoln passed on, Jim Shropshire is
Yeah.
retired. Um, we don't have a strong pipeline in that area
Mhm.
um, at this point. There are people, younger people, who are coming along. And then I'm so old that if I called the names I know, they'd say I'm not young. So, um, but religion, studying religion as a sociological reality as opposed to a theological reality is something that Black scholars pioneered
Mm.
even before we had people who had their doctorates in theology. When you look at the people like George Kelsey and Charles Hubert and others who did PhDs in religious studies, they were always looking at the sociological elements. They were always looking at the intersection between social theory and religion and theology as a part of what they do. It really wasn't until James Cone comes along
Mhm.
in the 1960s with the development of Black theology that you begin to see this track in theological studies that people like Jacqueline Grant and uh, Josiah Young, my Morehouse classmate, and others who came through Cone's program, you begin to see the burgeoning of the straight theological work. Fred Ware, who's the dean at Howard, did his PhD at Vanderbilt. But that's James Cone ushers that era in. Before that, most of the study of religion that was being done by African Americans was being done through the lens of sociology, and that was what my dissertation was on in 1983,
Wow.
40 years ago.
Wow. 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 So you've been in this journey for 40 years. Just quickly reflecting, what do you recall as the best parts of your doctoral studies? And then conversely, what were the most challenging parts?
Plus, part of my doctoral studies was recognizing how Morehouse had prepared me to think. I was like, I can do this.
Yes.
I had a sense of confidence that I could do this. The worst part of it was being misunderstood by my community. I think,
Mm.
there was some racist annoyances along the way, but I didn't. I was fortunate going to graduate school in the '70s. I could take advantage of some white guilt that you can't take advantage of now, right? So, um, but I know the community that I was working in. I was serving a church in Paterson, New Jersey. I was working with young people at Eastside High School. In fact, they made a movie about us, Lean on Me, with Morgan Freeman. That's where I
Yeah.
was working. Um, they were the adults didn't quite get it. My kids did. The kids I worked with, in fact, they came to my graduation when I got my PhD. It was funny
Wow.
because the guy who was behind me in line after they called my name, nobody heard his name because there were a bunch of black teenagers running up and down the aisle going "Dean, Dean, Dean," So having those kids there, that was a highlight as well.
That's amazing.
Um, the one challenge that I had was, as a young African American starting out in this journey, how do I want to put this? I didn't have a good sense of my limitation. I was got my coursework done,
Interesting.
got my languages, and I thought that doing PhD work was a way of solving the world's problems. My dissertation was going to change the world. And so I'm doing research, though I don't quite know what I'm doing it on, and I'm teaching, and I'm working with the kids, and I'm assistant editor of a Black newspaper, and I'm a newlywed. I have all these things going on, and the dean of the seminary where I was teaching said to me, "Do you realize?" I've been there 4 years at the time. He said, "Do you realize that you're going to lose your job?" I said, "No. Why would I lose my job?" He said, "You're on the second year. You're going into the second year of a 3-year contract. You've had one 3-year contract, now another 3-year contract. At the end of those 6 years, you're supposed to have tenure. If you don't, then they give you a 1-year contract, so you have time to look for another job." He said, "There's no way that you're going to have tenure in 2 years. You haven't even finished your dissertation."
Mm.
And I said, "Well, I didn't know that." He said, "I figured no one told you that. As the only African American on the faculty, you've been pulled in a multitude of directions. You've been sent to meetings. You're part of the affirmative action committee. You're doing all of these Black things." This is a white man talking to me, right? You're doing all these Black things, and I'm now that I'm the new dean, I want to rescue you from that. And I was kind of looking at him strangely. He says, "Listen, what I've done is I'm arranging for you to have 2 extra years to earn tenure. And I'm relieving you of all committee responsibilities at the seminary. So all you have to do is teach your classes. You don't even have to come to faculty meeting.
Nice.
In exchange for that, I need you to give up your community commitments so you can focus on your dissertation." And so I was very upset about that. And then he says to me, "As a white man, I feel funny asking a Black man to give up his community involvement." He said, "So I talked to one of the Black people on our board of trustees and asked her what she thought. And she told me, and this is what he said to me: tell Trulier that the community will be there when he finishes his degree and he'll have more to offer."
Mm. That's
So
good.
I had to let it's real good. And I tell
Brilliant.
students that all the time when they're, "Well, doc, I got this church stuff and I got this." Some things you have to let go. You cannot add doctoral work to everything else you're already doing, which is what I tried to do. Then I tried to add marriage to that. That's why that marriage didn't work, right? I tried, I kept adding, I kept adding instead of reprioritizing.
Yes.
And so I had to go tell everybody, that he let me keep my church job, right? But my kid, by working with the kids, working in the newspaper, all those other things had to go. So I went to talk to the editor of the Black newspaper. His name was Nathan Wright. Some of your viewers may remember that name. Nathan Wright was the chair of the very first Black Power conference. He worked very closely with Adam Clayton Powell back in the 60s and 70s. He wrote the book Black Power and Urban Unrest. And he had a doctorate, an earned doctorate from the University from SUNY Albany. SUNY Albany. So I went to tell Dr. Wright I had to step down and I had to get my dissertation done. And he said, "Well, I can tell you what's wrong with your dissertation." I said, "You don't even know what I'm working on." He said, "I don't need to know."
Mm.
He said, "You're Black, you're overreaching. We all, as African Americans, overreach on our dissertation topic. Here's what you need to do: ask a question, answer a question, sit down." I said, "Excuse me?" He said, "Ask a question, answer a question. The dissertation is designed to see whether or not you can pose a scholarly question and then answer the question.
It's good
That's
stuff.
it." He said, "Ask a question." So I had 120 pages of data. Again, like I said, I didn't know what I was doing with it. I had 120 pages written out.
Mercy.
So I looked at the data, I read some theoretical work, and I came up with a question. I asked the data a question, and then I proceeded to answer it. And over the course of the next 4 months, 120 pages became 308 pages. And it was a theoretical dissertation. Yes, I'm a sociologist, but I did it in social theory. I had started out doing one using empirical data, but I was living in the hood. Remember, I'm at East Side High School. I'm living in the hood, And I come home one day and some joker has broken into my apartment and stolen my stereo. And I
Oh,
guess he thought he had a bunch of Parliament Funkadelic tapes when actually what he had was my data. So yeah, I had to start all over again. Um, but you never heard that,
oh
obviously.
no.
Yeah, I was 2 years in, and dude stole my. I had been interviewing these octogenarians about life in Newark between the two world wars. Any rate, so ask a
Can I just
question,
pause you
answer
real
the.
quick? Let me just pause you right there. I
Okay.
just told somebody the other day who had all of her data on a thumb drive. All of her data, everything on a thumb drive. She was talking just a consultation. I do free consultation sometimes, and she said, "So I just called. No, actually, it wasn't a lady. It was a gentleman. I just called. By the way, I gave him your number, but we'll talk your name, but we'll talk about that offline. Not your number, but your name. Uh, he said, I just want to know, like, where should I start? I said, well, where's your data? He said, I have it right here. Let me show you. It's in my thumb drive. I said, first of all, where you start is storing your data, not just on the thumb drive. If you lose that thumb drive, all of your work is lost. Have you emailed it to yourself? No. Please, before you call me again, make sure that you have emailed it to yourself, you saved it on a cloud, you got a copy at your mama's house, like, because if you lose it, you've lost it, and that's
That's right.
too valuable. If somebody still steals your thumb drive, somebody breaks in your car, you need to have access. So, yeah, whether you put it in a stereo or on a thumb drive, it is easily accessible. Save
Right.
it as many places as you possibly can.
See, we didn't have computers back then, and
Exactly.
so when they took it out the stereo, I was, and I talked to people. They said truly, and I wasn't a doctor. It's truly in your freezer. Put your data in your freezer. That way, so get your tapes transcribed, put the transcriptions in your freezer. That way, even if your house burns down,
Mm, mm,
you'll
mm.
still have it. I had a professor at Morehouse whose dissertation was burned in a house fire, and he
Oh,
never finished. Okay, so yeah,
mm,
that's how I lost all my data like that, and so I had to
mercy.
start over again. But that time, second time, I used it was a theoretical one. All of my data was written down, and it was in the freezer.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
You
yeah,
said
so
something
I got go ahead.
you said something interesting about the process.
Hmm.
You implied that you were trying to save the world while
Hmm.
you were also trying to get a doctoral degree. And
Hmm.
that perhaps that was not a good method toward completion.
No, no, no. What you're trying to do with a dissertation is master the method of research, of
Yes.
doing primary research.
Yes.
That's all. You're not trying to develop the kind of knowledge that's going to change the world. Martin Luther King changed the world after he wrote his dissertation on Brightmanian personalism.
Yeah.
Then he changed the world. Did he
Now,
draw on that? Sure. But
yeah,
go ahead.
here's what I say. I say that your I always say your research matters because it does. It can be a segue to your greater work, but it is not your life's work. But it
That's
does
right.
matter. It does matter. But you don't have to try to do everything in your dissertation. Be focused and narrow and let it
Mhm.
serve as your foundation. But you cannot do it while taking care of, well, maybe someone can. I could not. While taking care of everything and everybody. You have to focus. You have to focus.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's what Nathan Wright was saying when he said, ask a question, answer a question, right?
Yes.
And he didn't say ask the question and answer the question. There are lots of questions. Pick one, ask it, answer it, show that you know how to do primary research, and then move on. Because in all of my work, 45 years teaching, I could name for you without a whole lot of trouble the number of dissertations I read that helped advance the general field to the point where I assigned them in the classroom. Um, Millhands and Preachers by Liston Pope is the one that comes most readily to mind, and there may be a couple of others, but very few. Mark Chapman's dissertation at Union Seminary on the history of Black theology, and I probably wouldn't have read that except that one of my mentors, George Kelsey at Drew, commanded a whole chapter of Dr. Chapman's research. But what people write in their dissertations tends not to be what they come to be known for. The dissertation is the opportunity to master the method, and then the method stays with you throughout your career as long as you keep it active, as long as you keep it viable, as long as you continue to ask questions, as long as you continue to think. It's a thinking strategy,
It
and
is.
that's basically what it is. And I think the problem for African Americans, even myself, I come from an educated family, right? So the PhD, I don't think I may have been the first person in my family to get a PhD. It depends on what time my cousin graduated. We both graduated the same year. And I come from a family where his is in chemical engineering. So my aunt says, your dissertation was not as hard as Mikey. Mike was an engineer. You're just religion. That they not come from a really bushy educated family. But that being said, for a lot of us as Black folk, the achievement of the PhD sometimes eclipses the utility of the PhD.
Mm.
And
Mm.
so, I'm getting my doctorate, right? And that's something to be proud of. Yeah, high five, celebrate. But it's really what you do with it.
Absolutely.
It's really how those research skills benefit you, benefit the community, benefit humanity in the long haul, not just in terms of the actual dissertation or the actual degree itself. I don't, Dr. Keslin, this may surprise you. I don't teach a single course at Howard University that I took in grad school.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I don't. There's not a single course that I teach that I took in grad school because I've developed as a scholar and as a researcher and as a thinker, and I've created courses that are consistent with my research interests, with advancing the community. Now that wasn't true when I first started. When I first started, all I taught was stuff that people had taught me. Right? I just modified my professor's syllabi. But as time went on, I would say by the time I got to Howard, which is 20 years ago, 2003, there wasn't a single class I was teaching that I had taken. And since I've been at Howard, I've only taught one class that I took as a graduate student. And that was the sociology and religion class back in, was it 2008, 2009? I forget. You were in that class. And that's it. And I've only taught that class once. Everything else has evolved. The work I do in social justice advocacy, criminal justice,
Wow.
even the work that I'm doing um, in teaching liturgical studies as a sociologist as well as a musician is everything that is developed as a result of my postdoctoral growth and development.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I so appreciate that you are um, using your degree to make a difference in the world. I just before we close, because we're almost at time, but Doc, you do amazing work in the area of criminology and incarceration and education in that realm. And you literally are a poster for how to use your doctoral degree to help other people. You're doing that. You truly are. And so the person that I referred to you is wanting to follow in your footsteps. So I'll
Oh,
I'll
well,
give you
thank
his
you.
name offline. But
Okay.
but you're
I,
doing the work. You're doing the work. And that really
yeah,
is what it's all about. It truly is.
yeah,
You could not have told me when I was doing that dual degree in MDiv and PhD that I would be here doing what I do now to encourage other people and some of the other things that I do. But this is why you have the degree. Dr. Trisha Bent Goodley said, when I was celebrating that I had achieved, I had finished, she gave me that moment. And then she said, no, you're not at the end, you're only beginning, because it's a responsibility. And so I am ever so grateful for you taking the time to stop by here and to inspire and inform some folk. We're over time now, but any closing words, any words of wisdom that you want to leave with the youth?
Sure. I'll follow up what you just said. In 1987, I became a pastor, and a friend of mine, Dr. Jacqueline Grant, professor of theology at ITC Seminary in Atlanta, she calls me on the phone and she says, Trulier, you don't need to be a PhD to pastor a church. If you're going to take that job, you still have to answer the question, how will you be a steward of your PhD? And I've taken that advice. That was 1987. And I've taken that advice, and it informs everything I do, whether I'm preaching. Doesn't mean I use big words when I preach, but it does mean that I I employ social theory when I'm trying to read scripture and interpret texts, when I'm looking at the intersection between the church and the criminal justice system.
Yes.
She challenged me, no matter what my position was, whether it was in the academy or whether it was in the church, to be a steward of the degree. I've never forgotten that. Dr. Jacqueline Grant, ITC Seminary in Atlanta. Be a steward of your degree.
That's a good word. That's something to be a steward of the degree. That's good. We're gonna end on that. That's a good word to take us out, Doc. Be a
Okay.
steward of the degree. I want to thank you, Dr. Trulier, for stopping by, for inspiring and informing our viewers. Thank you so much. Everybody, listen, Doc is just one of the people that we're interviewing in this special series. There are some other amazing guests who are going to stop by and share information and inspiration with you. So remember to follow us on Facebook, follow, share, like, subscribe, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, LinkedIn, and TikTok, perhaps, and just follow Dr. Kessler on all things social media. Dr. Harold Trulier, thank you for joining us today. I look forward, if I can return the favor and support and serve in any way, please let me know. Please give your lovely wife a hello for me. And thank you, everybody, for joining. Remember, the doctoral degree, it is not merely a degree of intelligence. It is a degree of persistence. And we at the PhD Consultants are here to help you persist. Why? Because your research matters. Thank you, everybody. Talk to you soon. Love you, Mom and Dad. Bye-bye.